I'm talking today to Obi Emelonye, who is the director of Last Flight to Abuja, which opens in London today in several cinemas across the city, and also will open in Nigeria in August. Obi, tell me what the film's about.
Last Flight to Abuja was supposed to be a retrospective, sensitive and retrospective look at an era in Nigerian aviation that I thought was behind us.
Tragically not.
Tragically, it has been. We have been reminded that that's as contemporary as they come.
Yes.
So it's supposed to look at the plane, a normal scheduled flight that came into difficulties, set in 2006. And as the pilot struggled with the controls of the stricken plane, the passengers on the flight had to relieve the twists and turns and the leaps of fate that got them on the flight in the first place. And it's the first foray of Nigerian films into the disaster genre.
And how did the idea come to you?
I wrote the script in 2007. Like I said, as I've always been fascinated with aviation. I always felt that I would be a pilot at some point before I kicked the bucket, and when those things happened, the multiple technical and human element stories that came from it felt like, I think this story needs to be told. At the time, it was still a bit raw and would have been almost insensitive to attempt it at the time, but I felt I needed to start developing that story, because I think the maturity that we've shown in Nigerian cinema has got to the level where we should be telling these kind of technically challenging stories and not wait for Hollywood to come and tell them for us.
It's a very different type of film to most of the Nollywood films, isn't it?
It is very different, very, very different. Like I said, it's technically tasking. In fact, when I started shoot in Lagos, and some of the blogs carried that my stars and I were working on this project that had to do with aviation and plane crash. Not just one person came up with this thing that Nigerians haven't crashed a car properly in a film. What are they doing trying to crash a plane?
Right.
So the leap that we had to make in terms of the visual realism, in terms of incorporating 3D animation and special effects to tell a story convincingly was great. And I put together a team who have worked tirelessly since the 6th of December last year when we wrapped shoot to try and deliver this film on a level that any African, particularly any Nigerian, will be proud of, to say this came out of my country.
And your last film was Mirror Boy.
Yes.
Again, describe what the origin of Mirror Boy was and how it came about.
The Mirror Boy was also conceived as a very humble story about identity crisis amongst young people, inspired by watching my 7-year-old son at the time, who grappled with his dual nationality. At school, he's a British boy, and at home, I enforced a more Nigerian regime. And for some kids, it could be, and some kids with all the cultural pulls that they experience in different directions, it could be a very confusing, especially at that 12, 13.
You yourself live between two worlds, don't you?
Exactly. So
you live both here and
in Nigeria.
Yes.
And I'm trying to get my family to experience the two sides, and I want them to experience both sides equally, because there's a lot of merit on each side of being British and being Nigerian. Being Nigerian kind of anchors them in some kind of strong ideological identity, and being British is being a citizen of the world. So I try to use this narrative of this young boy who gets taken back to Africa because he's at that age, 12, 13, when he gets into trouble, and his single mom couldn't handle that and sends him back home to Africa, and he goes missing on his second day in Africa and encounters this enigmatic boy about his age who takes him on a journey of self-discovery, a spiritual journey of self-discovery. So it's a deep African story with, when I say deep, I don't mean that in a denominational religious sense. It's a deep spiritual journey. Yes.
It has a spirit boy in it,
Yes.
which is very African in all
Yes.
sorts of ways.
Yes.
And how do you finance your films? How has Mirror Boy and Last Flight been financed?
Before I got to the level of the Mirror Boy and Last Flight to Abuja, which are considerable investments as far as Nollywood is concerned, I've come from a background of self-funded, self-made, self-promoted films. So I over the years, shot my first film in 1999, and over the years I kind of kept on, in spite of having parallel careers along the way, kept on making films, kept on putting my name out there until it kind of became synonymous with a certain quality, a certain feel in the industry. And you know, it is at that stage that you could convince somebody to invest in you. And for the Mirror Boy, I had the support of OTV, which is owned by the Redeemed Church in Nigeria, to provide.
Which is a pay TV channel.
It's not a pay TV. It's a
Free-to-air channel.
Satellite channel.
Yeah.
It's not pay TV yet. They're probably thinking about going pay TV. Yes, so they provided the bulk of the finance to make the film. We had the support of the Gambian president, who was very magnanimous in providing the kind of welcoming carpet that I've ever experienced as a filmmaker. So a lot of that came together, and the Mirror Boy was made and heavily promoted, because we felt, you know, it's not good enough to make a film that you feel tells a story that resonates with people. It would be, we spent nearly as much trying to promote the film, getting it into people's homes, getting it to them on Facebook and all the networks, and in the end, it's won a lot of awards, opened 1,000 doors for me personally as a filmmaker, and generally for African cinema. So, you know, it all came from being able to tell my own story, be it for no budget or even low budget, and then creating a reputation that somebody can now invest in. And you know, when your family starts investing in you, then that means you're doing something right. But for Last Flight to Abuja, my family invested the bulk of the finance needed to make the film. So that's a huge endorsement.
And this success has partly been built out of focusing on distribution and exhibition, hasn't it? Describe to me those early premieres that you did with some of the early films that you were making, and how you built that into cinema viewing.
When I started to take up this career as a filmmaker, I knew that there was a gaping absence of a black film industry in the UK, and I knew that if we would create an industry here, we had to do what Nollywood did, which is start from the very scratch. So I originally had some, what I would call, fairly ambitious attempts to force the industry, with a film called Echoes of War that I shot in 2003 with Judy Shekoni, that was in EastEnders at the time and had a very strong public profile. It opened in Picture House Cinemas, the 12 Picture House Cinemas in 2004. But while it was a personal conquest for me, it didn't work commercially for several reasons. One, because the opportunity that we were given was almost perfunctory. It was half expecting you to fail, and a self-fulfilling prophecy. We failed, you know. And also, our people at the time weren't at the level of awareness that they have right now. So, although people saw it as, oh, a Nigerian film in the cinema, but there was no drive to go out and pay money to see it.
Yeah. So
it didn't work in the cinema. And also didn't work on DVD, which I tried to do mainstream, because I felt, you know, if we had to be bold and we had to be ambitious, and part of that was to employ the same distribution network that other films made in the UK have, which is HMV, Oxford Street, Blockbusters, WH Smith, wherever they sell DVDs. I wanted my film sold there, and I succeeded in having my film sold there. But once again, I discovered that our people, who are my primary audience, will not buy from that place, that kind of place. So we now failed, and,
Yeah.
and a lot of people think The Mirror Boy is my first film.
Yeah.
There has to be a catalogue of failures from which you learn
Yes.
and perfect your craft
Yeah.
to get to the position where you could have a release of the type that I'm having now. So we went back to the drawing board, and part of what we did was to try and find a way to grow that cinema-going audience, to get them out of the house.
Nigerian diaspora. Yeah.
Out of the comfort of their homes,
Yeah.
and the TVs that have kept
Yeah.
them in there. And we started doing premieres as an event. So
Bring the stars
we
over.
brought the stars over from Nigeria
Yeah.
to come to the premieres, and Odeon was very supportive in that early stage. And the people would come out, take photographs, get dressed in their fineries, and then go home feeling good. And once they caught a taste of that, we now offered a mini distribution deal that opened in 4 cinemas across London for a limited period. In fact, some of them only weekends. So that people now felt, okay, we'll go out on a weekend, we'll watch a Nigerian film. And that has kind of metamorphosed into the position where The Mirror Boy came and opened in 10 cinemas, Odeon cinemas across the UK, which at the time was unprecedented.
Tell me, what's your next film project?
I haven't survived Last Flight Abuja yet. The plane hasn't landed yet, but it would land very soon.
Yeah.
But I think I assume my philosophy is a contender. I always consider myself a contender, not a champion.
Yeah.
Because the day you feel that you're a champion,
Yeah.
that day you get punched and knocked out.
Yeah.
So I feel it is a progress. It's continuous work that needs to happen.
But you're looking at an ambitious next project, aren't you?
Yeah.
And hoping to pitch it.
No, we're hoping to pitch the next film, which is called Safari, to very well known and Hollywood A-listers like Halle Berry.
Yeah.
The script is already in transit to her.
Yeah.
And if she likes it, then
Yeah.
we're on to something good. I think we need somebody of her stature, or somebody of that stature in a native African Nigerian film. They become a part of it and not overshadow and drown out the voice, what I call the quintessential African voice, which has made Nollywood popular in spite of its qualitative problems. So long as we retain that quintessential African voice and have the star power of somebody like Halle Berry to open doors for us, I think that would be what I would call the epiphany of new Nollywood.
Obi, thanks for talking to me today.
Thank you.